From the moment the morning sun lanced through the plate glass facade of Forrester Creations, Ridge felt the weight of expectation press against his shoulders like an exquisitely tailored yoke, a burden sown by his own father's stubborn resolve. Eric's voice, calm yet edged with that unmistakable paternal authority, floated across the executive office as he reminded Ridge yet again of the promise a son once made to a patriarch whose legacy was measured not only in flawless couture but in steadfast family bonds, a commitment Ridge had allowed to dangle unanswered because rings, proposals, vows, and happily ever afters suddenly seemed indistinct against the swirl of conflicting desires that churned in his chest. Eric, leaning against the drafting table where so many legendary collections had taken their first breath, dismissed Ridge's circular defense with a gentle, almost pitying sigh, pointing out that until Brooke's name was formally entwined with Ridge's on a marriage license, every spoken assurance was as ephemeral as the silk chiffons fluttering on the adjacent dress forms, and perhaps more galling until Ridge could declare himself engaged. His lectures about loyalty rang hollow. Then, as if issuing the final stitch on an already suffocating tapestry, Eric pushed his son toward reconciliation, insisting that destiny did not linger forever on the showroom floor. It needed to be worn, displayed, flaunted, or risk being lost to a rival run of fate. No sooner had Eric departed off to oversee final fittings for the celebratory preview he'd arranged ostensibly to honor the line, but in truth to showcase the enduring magnetism of Ridge and Brooke as fashion's power couple than Brooke herself swept in, her smile bright enough to rival the sequined evening gown draped on a nearby mannequin. Alone with Ridge in the CEO's office, she let her triumph spill from her lips in an effervescent torrent. The thunderous applause that had erupted when press outlets chronicled their runway embrace, the hushed murmurs of industry titans predicting a revitalized Forrester glory with the two of them at its helm, the giddy speculation that no rival house could hope to replicate the alchemy of a Logan Forrester fusion. She savored every detail, the way a vintner savors notes of oak and berry in a prized reserve, and Ridge, unable to escape the swell of her enthusiasm, nonetheless attempted a measured rebuttal, insisting the moment on the catwalk had been meticulously staged for dramatic effect: lights, music, audience angles, all illusion, all artifice, none of it a covenant carved in stone. But Brooke, radiant with the certainty that her place beside Ridge transcended rehearsed tableaus, closed the distance between them, her perfume, breezy and familiar, evoking memories of long-ago trysts on beach house balconies and whispered confessions in candlelit ateliers. She wrapped her arms around him with a tenderness that belied the steel in her voice as she asked no, challenged whether he dared want the same future she did, a future in which every triumph, every stumble, every dusk belonged to them as one. She called herself his Logan, not for an hour or a season but forever, the word forever hanging there, shimmering like spun gold, demanding acceptance or rejection with no space left for half measures. Ridge felt the old fire ignite, a heat that could melt years of detours and regrets into a single molten moment, yet he hesitated, seeing in Brooke's eyes both the promise of home and the peril of repetition. For once he longed for silence, a hush in which to hear his own heartbeat, but the world outside thundered for an answer. At last he pulled her close enough that their breaths mingled, and though no vows escaped his throat, the hush of his palm on the small of her back spoke a language Brooke understood all too well, one that said not yet, and perhaps soon, and, most urgently, don't let go. Miles away, the Pacific crashed against Malibu's crags where Steffi studied the horizon from the deck of the Cliff House, her thoughts consumed not by tide or wind, but by the fragile figure dozing fitfully inside the guest's suite. Liam Spencer, ex-husband, co-parent, friend, secret keeper, harboring a brain tumor doctors deemed inoperable. When he had confessed the grim diagnosis to her alone, insisting the children be spared the shadow, Steffi's first instinct had been to fight time itself, to drag her father's jet across continents hunting specialists. But Liam, ever the peacemaker even in his own tragedy, pleaded for no crusades and asked only for a place where he could be close to Kelly, could feel her laughter ripple through the corridors, could wake beneath the same roof as people who loved him unconditionally. Finn, guided by his physician's code and his humanity, welcomed the arrangement, reasoning that if complications arose he would be a heartbeat away, though the unspoken cost was the barrier it erected between hope and the truth. For Hope, days without Liam's voice felt wrong, like pages torn from a diary. She paced the empty cabin they once shared, sensing the absence in every creaking board, every forgotten coffee mug, haunted by the silent nursery monitor that once chimed with Beth's midnight whimpers. Quinn's passing mentions of Liam's new living situation failed to quell her dread. She knew a deflection when she heard one. Unable to endure unknowns, she dialed Finn prohibited territory since Steffi's edict declaring Hope a destabilizing force, but desperation outweighed etiquette. Finn's hand trembled as her name flashed on his screen, and though he tried to feign medical rounds, the catch in her voice carved a fissure through his resolve. Kids deserve honesty, she argued, and wives deserve it too, even if the marriage papers were dissolved. Finn promised nothing yet felt the oath of a man sworn to do no harm tighten around his lungs. That evening, under soft lamplight, Liam attempted to teach Kelly the constellations visible through her skylight, but dizziness fogged his vision, turning Orion's belt into a slipping noose of stars. Kelly, noticing her father's blanch, dashed for Finn, who arrived to find Liam clutching the edge of the bed in a cold sweat. It was a transient episode, nothing immediately life-threatening, yet it underscored the ticking clock. Steffi, returning from a board meeting, absorbed Finn's clinical rundown yet heard only the subtext. Liam was failing in increments too fine for calendar pages. She pressed her palms to her temples, torn between honoring Liam's insistence on secrecy and the fierce intuition that Hope had a right to brace herself and Beth for the inevitable. Meanwhile, at the downtown Art Deco bistro where neon light glittered on polished marble, Will Spencer raised a flute of champagne toward Electra, the up-and-coming influencer whose partnership with Forrester's athleisure subsidiary had ignited a wildfire of social media buzz. He extolled her achievements, 50 million views in 72 hours, a capsule line that sold out before dawn, endorsements clamoring like gulls, but his compliments carried a glint of proprietary hunger. Electra's laugh blossomed, grateful yet wary. She adored the support, but sensed a tempest beneath Will's charm, an urgency to claim what he admired. When he proposed an after-hours celebration at his private loft, she summoned a polite deflection, explaining, cheeks warm, that intimacy was a horizon she hadn't yet chosen to cross. Will masked disappointment behind a gracious nod, though jealousy flickered a man accustomed to mergers sealed swiftly disliked delayed gratification. Luna Nozawa observed from the shadows of a velvet booth, swirling club soda as if it were an elixir of vengeance. She had waited months for the spotlight, only to have Electra eclipse her with viral ease. Tonight she detected cracks in Electra's persona, this demure confession of virginity, this reluctance to embrace the brand of seduction fashion often demanded, and Luna began plotting how to weaponize such innocence. A whispered rumor here, a doctored photo there. A suggestion that Electra's wholesomeness was artifice, that behind the curated posts lay hypocrisy. In the ruthless theater of haute couture, perception could be reshaped like molten glass, and Luna intended to sculpt a scandal so dazzling it would cut Electra's ascent at the knees. Back in Malibu, dawn crept through gauzy curtains when Hope appeared on the Cliff House doorstep, heart hammering against her ribs as she rehearsed explanations for violating boundaries. Steffi's eyes widened, anger flaring, but Hope spoke first, voice quivering yet unwavering. "I feel him slipping away from me and nobody will tell me why." The plea cracked Steffi's armor. Sisterhood, motherhood, and residual love for Liam fused into reluctant compassion. She stepped aside. Hope found Liam on the terrace, wrapped in a blanket against the chill, gazing at the sunrise as though memorizing its hues for eternity. He tried to rise, but she crossed the space faster, kneeling, grasping his trembling hands. The truth spilled, then Steffi's tears confessing, Finn's clinical explanation echoing, Kelly's sleepy confusion stirring from the hallway as Liam's secret lay exposed beneath the cold pink light. Hope listened with a stillness that bordered on frightening, then pressed her forehead to Liam's, promising no matter where he slept, no matter what the scans predicted, he would never face a heartbeat without her presence. Nor would Beth be kept in a bubble of false comfort. She vowed to marshal every second opinion, every experimental protocol, to stand with Steffi and Finn united rather than divided, because the children deserved their parents cohesive in crisis, not splintered by pride. Liam, voice threadbare, thanked them all, yet one request hovered: let him live these days not as a patient, but as a father, a friend, a man who still loved deeply and laughed loudly. Across town, Will paced his loft, drafting a text apologizing for any pressure. Unaware Luna was already setting digital dominoes in motion. A mysterious blog hinting that Electra's virtue pledge masked dark liaisons, a scheduled leak of photos spliced to imply clandestine midnights with unnamed executives, salacious enough to sour sponsors, but vague enough to breed speculation. Luna smiled as she cued the timers. She knew public opinion could turn on a whisper, and when it did, she would be waiting to inhabit the vacant throne. Electra, oblivious to the gathering storm, sat by the Santa Monica pier listening to seagulls and composing a heartfelt message to Will explaining boundaries and possibilities, hoping to preserve the fragile beauty of budding affection without surrendering control of her narrative. She pressed send just as her phone flickered with alerts, first one, then dozens hashtags twisting her name into scandal, followers demanding explanations, sponsors requesting emergency clarifications. Her pulse roared in her ears as she realized joy and success could vanish overnight, and somewhere, someone had pulled the thread with surgical precision. At Forrester, Ridge stared at his reflection in the conference room window, Brooke's embrace still lingering like a phantom. He could practically feel the building vibrate with anticipation, employees whispering, publicists drafting engagement releases no one had authorized. His life, once governed by sketches and fabrics, now whirled at the nexus of corporate expectation, paternal pressure, and the singular heartbeat of a woman whose faith in destiny could level empires. He exhaled and wondered whether it was courage or folly to let that destiny claim him, to stop measuring choices with caution and instead tumble forward into the unknown role of husband once more. Brooke, waiting outside, traced the curve of the engagement ring she kept locked in her jewel box. The ring Ridge had given, taken back, given again through the years, each cycle engraving a deeper groove into both their souls. She believed in cycles completing, in circles closing, and she sensed the circle now so near completion, she could almost hear the clasp click. In the hospital lounge, Hope, Steffi, and Finn convened around Liam's latest scan, the grayscale image a silent prophecy no one dared voice. They would fight trials overseas, targeted gene therapy, immunological cocktails, but they also braced for the possibility that hope lay not in cures, but in memories forged fiercely, urgently, without regret. Beth and Kelly arrived, clutching handmade cards, and in Liam's wan smile Hope saw the measure of what mattered. love distilled to its purest note. Night draped Los Angeles in velvet when Ridge finally emerged, seeking Brooke. He found her on the terrace overlooking the city's spangled lights and took her hand, not to pledge eternity yet, but to share a quiet certainty that the runway magic hadn't been only staging. Sometimes a designer-orchestrated spectacle to reveal truth rather than conceal it, and perhaps the universe, like a skilled costumer adjusting seams, had simply readied them for their next act. Brooke leaned into him, heart thrumming, and far below, paparazzi lenses tilted skyward, hungry for any sign that the greatest love story in fashion was preparing its encore. As midnight tolled, Electra's tears streaked mascara across her cheeks while Luna refreshed her feeds, satisfaction eclipsing reason, unaware that Will, furious on Electra's behalf, was already mobilizing Spencer Publications to investigate the smear. In the undercurrent of glamour and gossip, alliances shifted with the subtlety of silk sliding off skin, and by dawn every secret and scandal would either unravel or knit closer to the hearts of those who dared to love, to betray, to fight, to forgive. Because in Los Angeles, on fashion's brightest stage, fabric may wrinkle, jewels may tarnish, vows may fracture, and tumors may grow, but passion raw, relentless passion never fades. It only changes threads, sliding from gown to gown, from lover to lover, stitching destinies together in patterns even the master designers cannot predict, patterns that keep the world watching, breath held, waiting for the next unexpected reveal. The next gasp, the next triumphant close of the curtain that marks an ending, yes, but also promises the beginning of another intoxicating chapter yet to be written.